energized. Let's go to Capitol Hill for some other people that need to stay energized. Joining right now on the phone is U.S. Congressman Eric Swalwell of California, a Democrat and a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I want to give you some time here. Tell me about what this new information. We now know the name of that White House insider. We now know the name of the person close to the president, as described last week. And we now know he's under scrutiny by the FBI. And we know he's had these meetings with Russian officials, including the Russian bank president. Where does it take your committee, this new information? Or did you have it already?
Good evening, Chris. And, for us, our investigation is a little bit different. It's not a criminal probe. It's one that is hopefully going to give the American people an answer as to what Russia did, whether any U.S. persons were involved, and what we can do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And in that pursuit for the truth, we hope to interview all relevant witnesses and review all relevant documents. Now, what the FBI is doing, what we're asking is that they just do it, and as a member of the Judiciary Committee as well, we want to see them be able to do it without being impeded by the politics of the White House. And so we hope, if this is indeed true, that someone so close to the president is being investigated, that there is not further disruption like we saw with the firing of Director Comey.
Could you imagine subpoenaing Jared Kushner before your committee?
So can't go into, we have an agreed upon witness list, and I think that is encouraging with the new chairman who's come on board. And I can't go into the names, but, I can assure people that they are witnesses who are relevant and have information for us as to, what was going on when Russia interfered and whether that included people on the Trump campaign.
Well, we all know enough about the tradecraft of getting information. Ken knows it better than the rest of us. But the tradecraft is you go down, you get somebody close to the top guy, and you squeeze him with the threat of incarceration for a long period of time, imprisonment. And you nail him on something you got him on in order to squeeze him. Now, there's three people that we know have had conversations with this president about Russia. That's Manafort. That, of course, is probably Roger Stone. I can guess that one because he's always up to something like this. And then you've got, of course, Michael Flynn, who the Russians themselves have shown an interest in trying to get a hold of. And then you've got this guy, Jared Kushner, who's probably shared the whole thing, the whole enchilada with this president. Are you going to be able to get any one of those three to talk?
Again, Chris, as a former prosecutor, when you would try and get information from a witness that you couldn't otherwise get from someone else.
Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, right. Can you get to him? He's also been involved with this footsie playing with the Russians.
Well, he's not only been involved, with his prior contacts with the Russians, he failed to disclose those in his hearing, and now is involved in the decision to hire the next FBI director who will theoretically oversee the investigation into the Russians. That's the bigger problem here. But, Chris, I'll just say, as a former prosecutor, you have to be very careful because jurors are suspicious of any witness who is getting a deal in exchange for their testimony. So you need to make sure you have that ring of truth that's coming from them because it can backfire. And so, you want to make sure they're not just saving their own neck if they're giving you information.
You mean if you went before a D.C. jury, you couldn't bring a conviction if Michael Flynn came out and talked about what Trump told him?
What you would also need is other corroborating evidence to support what that witness would be saying. Otherwise, the jurors would look at that very skeptically in any case, this or any other type of case, if they feel like the person is just trying to save their own neck.
You've been a great guest on our program so many times. Let me ask you this about you're looking at what we're looking at. I think you might be a couple steps ahead of us in covering it from the outside. But you've got Jared Kushner. We're showing all these incredible pictures of how close he is to this president, how he's everywhere. Michael Flynn, of course, was. Jared always will be. What value would he be to your investigation if he were to talk to you honestly?
Well, again, Chris, I don't know who our witnesses are. We want people.
No, if he were to be a witness, what would he tell you?
Yeah, we just want to know if any witness was communicating with Russia, was involved in the interference campaign that they were running, had information about what the campaign's role was, and also, Chris, if these are all just coincidences, the president is owed a clearing, and so we would want to see that happen too. But if they're not coincidences, we want to make sure that anyone who worked with Russia is held accountable. And let me just also add this.
That's the only excuse he hasn't used yet is coincidence. I have to hold up, Congressman. Hold on, because we've got an expert on this. Jay, let me ask you about the number of meetings. Explain the meetings so far, because the Congressman said he'd like to know under oath, of course. What happened with Mr. Kushner when he met with the Russians? Tell me about the meetings they had.
So right now we're looking at two particular meetings with Jared Kushner with the Russians. One was with the president-elect Donald Trump at the Mayflower Hotel with Ambassador Kislyak. And really they just talked very officially about, during the transition, about U.S.-Russia relations. The other was much more shadowy, and that's the one that you've really been focusing on, Chris, quite rightly so, with this Sergei Gorkov, who's the head of this Russian bank, the Vneshchakombank. And this is a guy who was trained by the FSB, so he's like overtly, we know he was already trained by the sort of Russia's CIA, his bank has been under sanctions since 2014. Why is Kushner meeting with this guy, and in what capacity? That's absolutely the right question to ask. There are two meetings that the FBI is focusing on that they want information about.
Congressman, your reaction to that?
Again, any time a U.S. person is dealing with a Russian, we should be very skeptical when it comes to business practices. And the CIA director laid that out former CIA director Brennan laid that out during his testimony this week, which is they use tactics like business entanglements and financial distress to draw people in and then have them do their bidding. And oftentimes the person doesn't even understand that they are de facto working for the Russians. So we want to understand whether any U.S. persons associated with the Trump campaign had relationships like that.
Do you have the capacity? Dianne Feinstein, your California colleague, the senator, was on the other night, last night, in fact, she led the show, and she said her concern is that the committees, including the House committee, don't have the staff they need to investigate. They don't have enough. You guys don't have enough. You don't have CPAs. You don't have accountants, bookkeepers, people that can really brilliantly look at paper, look at a spreadsheet, and know what's going on. Do you have that capacity? She says you don't, and she's questioning whether the Republican leadership of your committee is doing its best to staff up to catch the bad guys here. What do you think?
We have a great staff. I think their work was on display in the March 20 hearing with Director Comey, but certainly we did not hire this staff anticipating that we would be undergoing this type of investigation. So I know our ranking member and all of our committee members, Ranking Member Schiff and I would love to see additional investigators to go through the forensics here, to go through the financial transactions, but we're going to get this job done with whatever resources we have and whatever barriers are put up as we continue to plow ahead.
Are you confident that President Trump will pick the right, aggressive FBI director?
I hope he's learned lessons, Chris, from what he's done and the mess he's made over the past few months. But at this point, we expect anything. We're ready for anything. And again, there is a branch of government that has to approve that FBI director. So we're counting on leaders in the Senate to put our country's national security ahead of any partisan concerns.
Do you think it was right for the Democrats to bow down and let him make his son-in-law, his top staffer, sitting right next to him in the West Wing? Do you think it was right? I noticed there was very little anger about that. Everybody sort of bowed to that. I raised hell about it. I know he can legally, technically do it, but it doesn't look right, and it certainly doesn't look right now. Why is he bringing an amateur guy into the highest levels of government? Because they're related by marriage, by his daughter.
Yeah,
Why don't you guys raise hell about the very fact of this? It looks regal. It looks monarchical. It doesn't look American.
Autocracies are where you see family members serving at the highest level of government. And, it's not a Senate-approved position, but, I think I don't like it. I know people I talk to at home don't like how many family members are so close to the president, and, maybe he's going to pay a price for it now.
Well, thank you so much for coming. As always, please come back again. Eric Swalwell, the